bringing you the absolute best stories across the ag industry. You're now tuning into How I Built This Ag Business, an original series by AgSwag.
Hey everybody, we are on here with another edition of How I Built This Ag Business with Steve and Scott Henry, fourth generation farm. Their farm name is Longview Farms out of Nevada, Iowa. I believe they are farming over 10,000 acres now. They do everything from corn, soybeans, seed beans. I think they do a little bit of sorghum as well. I read online they got a custom spraying business, and they also do seed corn to tasseling. They're also recently involved in a few livestock ventures. On the cattle side, it's called Grained River Cattle Company. And they also have a pork division called Longview Pork. In addition to that, I know Scott is involved in a private investment farmland firm called Red Reef Partners. And with that, I'd like to welcome Scott and Steve to the show.
Good afternoon.
Nice having you guys.
Hey,
Jordan, I want to kick off one thing and just say, hey, I appreciate very much so you guys agreeing to do the podcast. As you know, I mean, I don't take any advertisers or any money from spots or any of that. Jordan and I just wanted to create a platform that we thought we could give back to the ag community and the rural community and the farm folks. And I always get asked, Steve and Scott, when I go out and speak, like, how come our stories are never told, whether it's about the food or the farm to food or that? And we have to, the big media kind of, I don't know, it's fake news or big media or whatever the heck we want to call it these days, but we're all battling this. So I told Jordan, and Jordan came up with the idea, hey, why don't we start just featuring some folks who have built up some great ag businesses, or not, just even some nice farms and farm operations, and then try to tell our story out there to the public and to the media. So I know a lot of folks like to fly under the radar. I know nobody really wants to be on and kind of, pat themselves back or tell their story, but it's like, if we don't, we see what happens. I think the other side's going to tell their story a lot louder, and eventually we're going to be paying the price over here, which we kind of already are. So I just wanted to say I appreciate it. I love the fact you guys have agreed to come on, just kind of tell a little background story and let other people see that what can be done and what hard work and things can come from it. So certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet.
Well,
so I guess let's get started. When the farm began, was it your dad, Scott, or I guess Steve? Was it your dad or his dad that started the farm?
It was actually my grandfather, Kenneth Long. And so when you hear the name Longview, we changed that name to basically kind of honor the past of a grandfather. I never knew him. He died before I had memory. And then my dad took over after my grandpa died. And then I took over after my farming with my dad for 6 years. And he was one of those few farmers just to cold turkey retire. And so we took the past long, and we like to say we're trying to honor the past, steward the present, and look to the future, because agriculture and farming is always going to look different. And I was very blessed that my wife has been fully engaged in the farm for about 6 years less than me, and she would be what we call our CFO around here. And then really fortunate that after Scott had a business career elsewhere and got some education, and he came back to the farm, and then our youngest son, Eric, is also back at the farm. So I like to say that I'm standing on the shoulders of a grandfather I never knew, and a dad who was conservative but cared and loved his family. And I just hope that I'm able to put my head on the pillow my last breath and say I did the same thing.
So what'd the farm look like when you took over?
I had a short lending career. I was real estate lending from 83 to 88. So a great time to be a land loan officer. But it was a great education, and A lot of good folks made a lot of decisions that just went against them. I mean, they were trying to do the best thing, and I probably would have been in the same situation. So it's hard to say. So yeah, when I came back to the farm, my dad was farming 1,200 acres, and it was all family owned or rented within the family at that time. And I came back, and that's when I kind of gradually started renting some. But back in 88 and 89 is when I bought my first farm, and I was able to get it paid for with the additional revenues we had from seed corn. And, you know, my plan was never to get to the size we were, but to increase my land ownership because it's what I enjoyed doing. But then land prices got up to a little over $6,500 an acre, and the whole business plan had to change at that point.
Yeah, so Steve, we're moving back into this where cost of money isn't going to be free anymore. So, it's going to definitely be different. Hopefully,
yeah, I like to say that my entire career has been about debt management, not cash management.
True.
Because I am a product of the 80s. I mean, I wasn't afraid of debt, but I just didn't want to get beyond my debt repayment capacity and my ability to sleep well at night. And so,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens to some of the farmland prices if we get more of a significant uptick in these rates. I mean, it could get a little nutty.
Well, Scott and I have varied opinions on that one. So I'm, like I said, with interest rates getting up there, the repayment capacity, in my opinion, the other alternative investments are going to start becoming more attractive than what farmland's typical demanded. And I guess it just depends on what people are going to be willing to pay on rent. I don't know. That seems as basic to me as that.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I just had the conversation with Jordan because we buy buildings and we buy other properties, and we're looking to buy some more buildings. We do some, convert them to Airbnbs or multifamily. And I just said, look, son, most of the bigger money guys I know who are invested in real estate are taking their money out, and they're putting it in a 2-year treasury, earning 4%, or they're putting it in a muni, and they're earning 5 plus the tax deferred. They're earning 9% on their money. They're not having to jack with renters. They're not having to mess with repayments, depreciation, fixing. I said, guys are just moving money around right now because of this interest rate thing. And that's what I said, Jordan. I said, I think there could be some bargain. I mean, there could be some farmland prices that farmland could get hit pretty good because you're going to pull a lot of investor money, which would be the funds, California teachers pension. They're not going to be looking to buy farmland when they can get 6-7% on their money sitting over here in a muni or something. So you will pull some buyer's interest out of this market, I think, and Jordan's young, hell, he hadn't seen anything.
Yeah, I haven't heard it as of yet, but I talked to a few guys today. They're wanting us to help push some farm ground. I guess they're trying to dump it, get rid of it, because they said they can't afford it anymore. They're freaking out, calling the auction places like, I gotta get rid of this thing now. Like,
just managing their debt. Yeah.
Yeah. But
it'll be interesting to see if folks are as aggressive on wanting to take on new land when they see the interest rate prices that they're going to have to chew on. So yeah, I'm in agreement. So it definitely will be interesting. So let's get back on track. Sorry, I interrupted.
You're all good. What were like some of the biggest changes you made on the farm, Steve, once you came on board?
I wouldn't say that I've done anything really, innovative. I hope I've had some ingenuity to such stuff, but to say that I built a better mousetrap or did anything real innovative, no. I would say that I've always kind of tried to operate with a mindset of continuous improvement. I think we can always do better. It's not to me, growth should be the result of doing the right things, not for just the sake of growth. And I hope that, when I'm doing the right things, that, if growth is the result of it, it's the right thing. So the seed corn production, my dad started that, and I was able to balance, relationships and get a couple more companies. But again, you're dealing with third parties there, and everybody can choose what they want to do on that. So we've been up and down on acres, and one of the other things we did is I got a great group of people working with us, just a tremendous group of people. My dad was just kind of a command control, one guy operation. And, as we've grown, I've had to try to get better at leadership. I'm not perfect by any means, but I've tried to get better at it. And yeah.
So
Scott, do you want to add anything here on that?
Yeah. What's Scott?
I think one of the things that we've tried to do here in the last 5 to 10 years is to listen to what the consumer is saying and try and implement more sustainable and regenerative practices that make economic sense. And so, for us, we've really taken the prescriptive approach to each farm that we operate. And so, like I always tell folks, we have farms that are no-till, but we still have farms that are pretty conventional tillage as well. It varies based off of crop rotation and soil type and just kind of the other ways that we're managing the property to drive yield and to drive those economic returns. The other thing that we've done, and again, I don't know if I'd say that it's purely innovative, but we've really looked at how we can integrate livestock into the system, both for the agronomic benefits of manure in the case of our hog barns, as well as an opportunity for my brothers and I to begin to build wealth separate of kind of the family land holdings or the generational elements of what my grandparents and great grandparents and what my parents have built. And so the livestock has purely been a focus of my brothers and I. My folks are not a part of that entity in any way. And so it's really allowed us to grow on our own and given us some satisfaction of feeling like we're doing something that doesn't require a co-signer or somebody to kind of hold our hand and be there as a backstop. It truly is a product of our own volition, and it's been interesting. I don't know if I'm ready to say it's been great, it's been good yet, but we're definitely enjoying the benefits on the farm side of that. And I really like building great teams, and so it's been fun to have a separate team focused on livestock versus the row crop part of our entity.
We've seen that quite a bit with farm families, not quite a bit, but I think the successful farm families try to find something that their kids can have ownership in exclusively. Like you're saying with the livestock, Jordan with the AgSwag, we come up with other businesses. Just, I think it's important that you got to let the kids fail. They got to be able to, build self-confidence in themselves and make decisions. Sometimes they're not always going to be the best, but we're at least, Steve, we're at least hereby to maybe dust them off when they get really a swift kick. So it's like, I commend you guys. And I think we're seeing that as we talk to more families, that hopefully people use those ideas and allow their kids to kind of come up with some new things that fit into the overall model. I'm sure is your mom still helping you with any of that on the CFO side, or is you guys doing it all?
Yeah, we try to integrate some of the finance and accounting components of it, but we have our own separate controller and bookkeeper on the cattle side of what we do. The hog barns are easy to roll in just because there's not a whole lot of monthly journal entry stuff to deal with there, being contract finishers. But the cattle entity definitely requires a little bit more of its own. The other piece of it that why we pursue it goes back even to the conversation we were just having about farmland as well. My brothers and I are able to invest in these entities or these businesses, and the cash flow covers the principal and the interest, and sometimes there's even a little bit left over. That's a lot different than when you're buying farmland right now, and so that's one of the strategic decisions we've made as a family is the farmland is maybe more driven for a cash buyer or somebody that has, the wherewithal to subsidize it and to make those payments. Let's take the riskier adventures, I guess, instead of just a venture, and let the next generation that has the longer time horizon to take advantage of that. And I think it's really changed the perspective we have when we consider non-ag investments as a family as well. And that's something that I hope that we can continue to do.
So on the cattle and the pork side, is that an existing operation you guys bought, or you guys just bought some land and
Yep,
gave it a
good
go?
question. So the pork, we added hog barns just like a lot of next generation guys have done that have come back to the farm. We built 3 5,000 head sites back in 2019, and those were all placed strategically around the farmland that we own and rent under Longview Farms. So we're able to keep the manure for ourselves, and then we have a contract with Tri-Oak Foods, and it's been great. So that was full scale development from bare dirt, effectively. The cattle entity, we actually purchased an existing feedlot, and so Grand River Cattle Company was one that we had been approached about after doing the hog barns. I think folks kind of wondered if we'd be interested in expanding even further into livestock. And for being kids that in 4-H we had show lambs, we didn't have cattle or pigs to kind of dive headfirst into these entities was a little bit nerve-wracking for us. But the feedlot we purchased came with an existing employee group that is second to none, in my opinion. And our manager down there, Todd Masters, is salt of the earth guy that really understands how to background cattle or calves and get them started and do a great job. And so we're really proud of what they had already built, and to be kind of the successor owner as the previous generation there was just looking to exit. It's been a great opportunity for us to both learn and to kind of come out of COVID, when owning a feedlot might not have been the best decision at the beginning of our entry into that business. The last year or two has really been rewarding for some of the commitments we've made down there.
So what are the you go ahead, Dad.
I just got a question for Scott. Are we seeing a lot more hog operations coming back to Iowa or into the Midwest? We had that big push out east.
Yep.
I traded at the Merc in the early 90s through the 90s. And then, we used to do a lot of hog trading, and then it seemed like it was all a lot weather related. We'd get a lot of weather volatility in action, and everything, a lot of moved out of Iowa and moved out to Carolinas. And is it back now too?
I think it's definitely back. I don't know if the last 3 to 5 years have had the increase in capacity as far as new spaces coming online. But what we're really seeing a lot of now in Iowa is these 10 and 20-year barns, as they come off their first or second contract, have been trading. And so the market for a used livestock facility is strong as it's ever been. And so you're seeing some switching on contracts from different integrators, just depending on kind of who's making what bets or where sow numbers are. But I haven't seen a ton of new spaces come online, at least not at the same pace as back when I was out of college. That was my job, was for a pork investment fund, or a fund that had raised money to develop livestock sites. We were building 12, 13, 2 barn sites a year. And so we aren't seeing that pace, but we've definitely seen the used or existing facilities start to trade at a significant number relative to where they have been. So.
Cool. Go ahead, Jordan.
How do the dynamics work on the farm with the pork and the cattle and all that? Are you guys is the cattle operation having to pay the farm for the feed, or are you guys sourcing the feed somewhere else, or how do your dynamics work on all that?
Yeah, so we have quite a few synergies with the pork entity, between the farm and the pork entity, where we get the manure benefits there. we have a shared employee between the two. And then the cattle, it truly was an investment by my brothers and I on as not completely passive, but it's an hour and a half away actually from our row crop farm. And so it sits just down there about 10 miles from the border of Iowa and Missouri in southern Iowa. And so we don't unfortunately get to see a bunch of synergistic benefit for it beyond some of the back office and accounting related sharing functions. The real thing that we learned early on with the pigs too is it's hard to hire people that want to do both row crops and livestock. There's livestock guys and there's row crop guys, it seems like to me, from kind of the day-to-day operation standpoint. And so we've tried to have everything stand on its own and avoid too much sharing of employees, just because a lot of our row crop guys, they weren't, when we hired them, we didn't have any livestock, you know, and so trying to just maintain the culture and the commitments we had made to them when they came on. They might not have been wanting to work in a hog barn, they wanted to drive tractors, right? And so so we've tried to be true to that and honor those commitments. And then the feedlot just being as far away as it is, that's never been an issue. Maybe send an intern down there for a week or something, but that's about it.
So
it kind of fits Jordan, that kind of fits our model that I always told Jordan. So when I was younger, when I first started learning a lot about businesses and investing in that, I mean, I always found there were two ways. There's really two ways. You can make your money and earn your money and invest it back in your own central core business, which means hiring more employees, growing it out, buying more land, or you can make your money and invest it into ancillary business models and hopefully build and grow those out. So it sounds like you guys are doing a little bit of both, which is similar to what we tried to do. I mean, I know a lot of companies, especially if you're a public company or something, you have to really try and take your money, invest it back into your core business, hire more people, show frontline growth. And, you know, I like the play. Yeah. Getting into the, even if it's an hour and a half away, it's taking some of the money off the table where you're at and diversifying the bet and pushing it in another direction. So.
We've also really come here recently, and my dad can share his opinion if he wants here too, but of whenever we're going to do something that's ancillary, we try to do it with a best in class type of operator, right? And so if it's, in this case, the feedlot, what's really sold us on that was the manager. And so Todd had been there for a long time. He was just really good at what he did. And so we were able to have a lot of confidence knowing that we were working with an individual that was truly the best, you know, in class type person. And whether that's with that entity or that investment, or even partnering with great apartment developers or operators on some non-ag stuff that we've done, I've noticed that a lot of the investments that have worked out well for our family have been where if it's an area where we don't view ourselves as a knowledge expert or a subject matter expert, you know, partnering with those that are has been great. And so hopefully we can be that for folks that want to buy farmland and have an operator to do it. Longview Farms is great at what they do, I think, and is always looking to grow. But on the same coin or in the same vein, you know, as a family that's literally 80+% invested in agriculture and pretty heavily in row crop agriculture, it's been really interesting these last several years to expand or diversify that and just to see the benefits that do come with that.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. Tell us your thoughts.
I would say I've learned a lot from the next generation. My operating plan was I'm a farmer. I love to drive a combine. I love to drive a corn planter, you know, and I love, you know, the fact that, you know, I have family owned land working with family, but the economics just didn't make sense for the next generation. And without Laurie and I just doing everything or turning over our balance sheet, signing notes. And you were saying it early, Kevin, and I agree with it. You know, they need to experience the rewards of their good decisions and the consequences of their poor decisions. And that's the best learning opportunity and the best way to get the fire in the belly that I think that I think is important to be the kind of person that can have the confidence and the ability to make their own choices for their own next generations of families.
Hey, Jordan, while we're on the subject, I will share that some of my worst business decisions or investing decisions would be just like Scott is saying. I didn't recognize when you're making the ancillary investments outside your core competency, you have to be betting on the people in charge or the people. And I think that's what Steve and Scott are both saying. Because I have invested tons of money. We used to always say, I'd come back home to my hometown and guy'd have an idea and it would be, his idea and my money would soon turn into, his money and my experience in the end. And it wasn't a good thing. And I've done many of these. So the guy comes with an idea and he's got a sales manager that's kind of a rookie half-ass sales manager, and you put money in it. Well, what's going to happen is it's going to take a ton of your bandwidth and time to try and save that entity or to keep that thing from going into a hole. And really, that's what you don't have, as you guys would argue at Longview Farms. You don't have the time and the bandwidth to add in a big way. Jordan and my daughter one time wanted to buy I bought restaurants and I bought crazy things, and I bought them. In the beginning, I would be like, oh, it's a great real estate play or it's a great this, but was not buying people or investing in people, I should say. And you have to have that because it's the strain on your bandwidth and the distraction time that will kill your core business and then really start to impact and affect the money that you're generating from the core business. So you really have to think that one through. And I think, like you said, Scott, you guys were smart enough to realize that the cattle operation, best of class with the best of class management team, or if you're looking at an apartment, whatever it may be. And that's a great rule of thumb to write on the wall, Jordan, on that one, just to keep you out of trouble. So I think if you're going to get outside your core competency, you better have a great team you're investing in. So.
Yeah, what'd you guys do on the pork side of things? Did you go out and try to find a guy to manage that side of it first, or did you jump in the business and then say, hell, we got to find someone to manage this thing?
We tried really hard at first to find an integrator partner that we knew aligned with our values and our approach to business, and really we own a facility, right? So it's a real estate play that just happens to have a livestock component and a manure benefit. But we live in an area we're rural still here in Nevada, but we're 15 minutes to the center of Ames, Iowa, and 45 minutes to the center of downtown Des Moines. So we're not out in the sticks by any means here. And so the livestock, kind of the urban versus rural battle, or kind of the disagreements on that, was a real thing. And so we had a lot of integrators tell us, hey, we're interested in sites right now, but we don't want to come to an area where there could be some reputation risk or fallout for the permitting process. And so that kind of turned us around a little bit. And so we actually took the risk and developed these sites and permitted them without an integrator partner. And so we went through the public process and everything, not knowing if we get through all that there'd be somebody there to even put pigs in the barns. And so we kind of bet on ourselves there. And thankfully, there's enough history and track record on contract finishing hogs that, we knew that we could probably find somebody after the fact that could help us out, or an integrator that would work. And so it was an interesting conversation. We went to Tri-Oak after we got our permits and said, hey, we got 3 5,000 head sites that you could start digging on tomorrow. Typically that's a 90 to 180 day process that, and so that bet paid off in spades for us there. But we had first started looking for a great partner, and there was just enough hesitation that we said, well, let's take this risk off the table for them and put it on ourselves. And then once we did that, we were able to connect back with Tri-Oak, and it's been a great relationship.
Good deal. What is on the farm side? Do you own part of the farm, Scott?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Eric and myself, and then my mom and dad are all equal partners. And one of the things that I commend my parents for, and I'd say this if he wasn't on the screen a year or two, but is their desire and commitment to truly not just transferring management decision making, but also equity as the next generation has come back. And we did it in a unique way, actually. Instead of buying out the older generation, what we did was we just started a whole new company. And so we were able, because Eric had come back, and at that point we knew that my other brother Kyle was not interested in coming back. We said, let's start a new company that we're all working together with, and then over time, we'll lease equipment back from the old company, but we've gotten through most of that now. And so it's allowed Eric and I to experience the fruits of our labor, but also we're signed on the note just as much as everybody else is. And so the risk reward is truly balanced amongst all the partners of the business. And it's worked well. It truly has allowed each of us to thrive in different ways. So Eric, one of the reasons he's not on the podcast today is because he's running the harvest crew right now. When Steve and I were able to sneak away, but it's truly allowed him to excel in his role operationally. It's allowed my role more on the business and strategic side of things, and some of the other to run up the other ventures that we have. In addition to my role with Red Reef. And then it's allowed my dad to successfully transition his day-to-day role to Eric, but still be around in a coaching capacity to make sure that we're all, the trust but verify, and give them a long enough leash to do what they need to, but not too long to hang themselves. And so that's really been actively deployed on our farm in a way that I think's really worked out well. And we hope that it extends beyond just Eric and I, but to our operators as well. Having my dad, who's able to grab a college intern and say, hey, we're going to go scout some fields because you're an agronomy major, and I think our whole operation has benefited from that. And I do know that the risk tolerance that Eric and I have is a little different than the risk tolerance of my parents at this stage in their life. And so I think being equal partners allows us to get the best of both worlds, right? We're not giving up opportunities because the older generation is looking to phase off into retirement or slow down or get out of debt or whatnot. But we're also not completely just, well, Steve may disagree, but we're not completely going crazy with lining up new loans and going nuts on different projects that we maybe shouldn't be chasing either. And so it's really been it's been a successful story, I think. I am biased of what farm transitions can look like, but it's something that would not be possible at all without the conviction and commitment of my parents to see it through.
I like the setup of that. Maybe that's what we should do, Jordan. I mean, maybe we should each throw a couple $100,000, start a new company, and then we can build companies from there equal. Because mostly it's like Jordan one time, he's like, Dad, seriously, he's like, I come to you with all these ideas all the time. And you're just like, no. I'm like, no. Jordan's like, man, I'm tired every time, Dad. I'm just coming to you with these ideas. I'm like, yeah, no, we're not doing it. No, I've already done that. He's like, is there anything now that I'm just like, I don't know, son, but those aren't it. I'm not doing any of those. So I like that, how you guys transitioned at those, start a new company up.
Well, Laurie and I felt pretty strongly on that, is that no, the future isn't Steve and Laurie. We feel like we've led a very, very, we've met so many of our goals personally that it's kind of like, well, I don't want to lose the fire in the belly. That might be the one thing I'm concerned about a little bit for myself. Right. But at the same time, I want to make sure that they're able to create the future for them. Yeah. And I want to be a partner. That's where my dad was so great. I mean, he walked away, but every once in a while there would be a farm that I didn't want to take the whole bite into. And I said, Dad, I don't want to take this whole thing out. Would you be a part? Yeah, I can do that. You know, and he just said, yeah, I can do that so many times. It made me really appreciate that. So then hopefully then I can support Scott, Kyle, and Eric on their choices in the future too.
Oh yeah, I think that's great. I agree. So I mean, I think, and that's one core or one common thread amongst a lot of us in the ag space. I always feel like my dad worked super hard, my grandpa works, and they always would just say, hey, if you could just move the ball a little further down the field for the family. I mean, that's the kind of the feeling that they wanted. It sounds like you and your wife have done that, and hopefully pass it on to Scott and Eric, and they'll do the same, and same with our family, and we all move a little further down the road. So
that's a good way to say it.
Yeah, I think that's a good philosophy. So yeah, good stuff there.
Yeah, Scott, how important you think that ownership stake? I'm assuming that's kind of was your first step into kind of the bigger role. You took ownership of the farm a little bit, and now you're getting into the livestock a little bit on that side of things. But how important do you think that is to where you're at today? Because I think me and my dad have a similar relationship, and we all have equal say in the family on certain investments and stuff like that. And I see other family businesses to where the son, you would say, is, hell, he's stuck in the combine the whole time, just like the laborer, until dad's old and can't make decisions anymore. And I personally feel like I'm leaps and bounds ahead of where those guys are, just on a business side, making decisions. Like if my dad were to get hit by a bus tomorrow, I think I could pick up the pieces and run with something and make some stuff happen, to where other generational businesses I see, they would have no clue what to do. So I think it's important.
We've always kind of used the bus analogy too internally. You know, what happens if and I tell you what, we don't take this the wrong way, Dad, but we wouldn't miss a beat if something happened to my dad or one of our operations manager. The role we still need to successfully transition, though, is my mom's role as CFO. So we've hired our first kind of non-family senior leadership team member, is a controller guy that we just hired to transition into that CFO role. But I think that's where, from a transition standpoint, we do have some exposure still on that side of it. We could struggle through it, but we definitely don't have it all figured out yet. For her role, it does make a difference, though, back to your point on ownership, because especially in the way that we farm, you know, we try to use other people's money as much as we can, and that's been the way to make money the last several years. Now that may be changing with a lot of these interest rate hikes and the new world that we're getting into. But when Eric and I look at how we're going to be able to move the football further down the field, which is a great analogy, Kevin, the way that we look at it is, well, you know, we may have a nice balance sheet for kids our age, but it's not that liquid. And so we have to truly manage what little cash we have in a way that can be impactful. And that's partly why it's not farmland for us. It's been investments back into the operating company, just because that still has been the highest grossing return entity for us. The livestock has been great just because banks lend at a higher LTV on that than about anything. And young and beginning programs are really supportive of taking it to even higher LTV levels. And so that's really been what's been driving that. And seeing the benefit of that as an owner really does, you know, make you more willing to do it again. And obviously it's, you know, when you hit a rough patch, you feel like you got a little bit more there to kind of chew off of or give up if you needed to. And so it's been great. I also think it gives us confidence when we're addressing the team, right? So Eric just turned, 28. I'm 32. You know, most of our employees are 45, 50 plus, and there's a good chunk that are older than 60. And so it's one thing when you're the boss's kid to be addressing that, you know, but it's a whole different thing when you're an owner, right? And so I think that having ownership stake in it gives us each an individual level of confidence around, hey, when we make a decision, you know, we're living with the outcome, good or bad. And so we can instruct in that same vein. And so that's been another kind of mindset that I think has really helped with it. And it just incentivizes us to actually know what's going on in all aspects of the business, not just the little box that we would manage.
That's putting it good. That's a good analogy on that for sure, on the ownership. Back to the farm mom for a second. How about the most undervalued, underrated player on the team? When Jordan was little, Jordan was, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6. Michelle was going to take a trip. She had to take a trip somewhere for business or something. And Jordan looked at me, he's like, Dad, he's all serious. What are we going to do when our cooker's gone? And I'm like, it's like, what are we going to do when our cooker's gone? And I'm like, hey, Mom? And I'm like, we're going to be fine. We're going to figure it out. Now that he's older, he's always like, Dad, we're screwed. If something goes down, Mom goes down, we're screwed. Mom's got all the books, got all the knowledge, all the insight. I mean, hell, I don't know if we can get into our own safes without Mom. So no, I agree. That is a tough one because, like Michelle always says, my wife, I mean, she's like, anything you guys don't want to mess with or anything that just rolls downhill ends up on her desk and her plate. And accounting, for sure, all the accounting books and paperwork. And it's like, man, yeah, you're right there. Finding someone good to help your mom or get that replaced, that is tough. I think that's one of the bigger ones too.
I think that's probably our biggest weakness right now. I would definitely say she's definitely the glue that keeps it together. And
yeah, she's the strength, but it's like, man, if something would we'd be in deep shit for sure on that one.
We'd be working double what we're working now.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's possible.
No, I hear you. I don't know either. So yeah, I give you guys credit on that one. So yeah, hopefully you find some way to transition that into, you know, and we try to, because a lot of the people we work with, Scott, you understand, like they want on new systems or new platforms. And then, you know, my wife's like, I'm not switching, I'm not changing. And so we're kind of, you know, and it's like, hey, I don't want to deal with it either. So we're just all like hands off with Mom. Just let her do her thing and nobody mess with her. So no, it's been good, but I'm with you. That's definitely one to transition or find a way to help transition. So especially as you guys add more and more entities, it just becomes, the bandwidth down there can get crazy. So yeah.
So what's next for you guys? What are you guys looking to get into next? How are you wanting to transition the farm to your kids, Scott?
Yeah.
Or I guess the whole operation.
For sure. No, I think that
well, first of all, check in with us at 5 years from now to see if any of this is real. We'll find out.
Can you tell when I said, hey, we should get into livestock, who said no and is not involved? Yeah. So I know I feel your pain there, Jordan. You know, I think whenever we have visitors or a tour group comes through the farm, you know, we always give a presentation on the overview of our farm. And the last slide in it, it's 3 pictures. Kind of, there's a picture of my great-grandfather and his farm in Western Iowa. And, you know, he was a guy that what he added, the strategic decision he made was at 55 years old to sell. He had 720 acres paid for ground in the 1950s, and he sold half of it, picked the family up and moved them to where we are today. So it got us out of sandy river bottom ground to rich, deep black topsoil in central Iowa. And he made that decision at 55 and farmed for 8 years and unfortunately died early on a tractor. But you look at that picture compared to the next one, which was my grandparents, the farmstead that they built here that had been our headquarters up until 12 years ago. And, you know, it looked kind of like you'd picture. You had little outbuildings and different things for a lot of just small scale, but all types of livestock and row crops. And then the picture of where we are today is a very modern, professional, commercial farm. And that's definitely been the goal of my folks, is to build something that was attractive for the next generation to come back to, that was successful in a way that met the needs of people that weren't family. You know, when you have non-family employees, how do you attract them? Well, coming to work at a nice, clean, professional, progressive farming environment, it brings them in. And so the question that we always pose to groups, and what Eric and I are posing to each other, is what's the next picture look like, right? If we're the fourth generation, what's that fourth picture going to be? And I think right now we have this livestock element that it could be that, but I also think that there could be some of these more kind of ancillary non-ag type investments as well, that maybe take it from Longview Farms to Longview Group, right? Or Longview Companies or something, kind of take that diversified approach. And I don't really know what that will exactly look like. I know two things to be true. One, we want to do it in a way that there'll be opportunities for our kids, our families to be involved, and that we can still work together as a family. But I think that we're also committed to it not looking the same. And so whatever that may be, who knows, but I think there'll be an element of diversification and integration, vertical integration with the current entities that we have. And so that's where we look at some of these non-ag investments, whether it be into apartment buildings or private equity, on different things with these renewable diesel plants and plays that we've made there, and others that, I think our generation will have the influence over the family capital to start looking at it as a family office, not just a family farm. And that really excites me. It excites the finance major and kind of the personal interest that I have. And it allows us to bring in the non-farming brother into the conversation too, which is really cool. We have a great relationship with our brother Kyle. He's a lot smarter than all of us. He's an attorney, and he had just chose early on not to be a part of the day-to-day operations of the farm. And I would love for that next picture to find a way to incorporate him and his skill set too. And he's fully invested, put capital in, put time in on the livestock with Eric and I. So we're already kind of keeping him involved. But to me, I get really excited when I think about some of these other avenues that we can really bring him into the fold, even though he may not be a day-to-day farm operator like Eric or I would be.
They always said, Jordan, remember when I told you I was at a conference once and spoke behind a group, that they said, I think it's over 90-some%, 95% of most of the businesses never last past 3 generations, and almost 99 never make it past 4. Not just farm business. I'm talking businesses in general. It was always the second generation had a firsthand look at how hard the first generation had to work, what they had to sacrifice. So they were good. Third generation got a pretty good look at it. But then after that, things really start to just shift and change on how much sacrifice had to be made. And so you lose a little bit of that, I guess, that X factor, trying that. But I think you guys are awesome in the fact you keep a lot of that past. I hear you guys talking about that quite frequently, what the past was like and where you've gotten to, and trying not to lose ground and continue to move forward and honor the past and have a vision for the future. So I think that's awesome.
It's like I was sharing earlier, it'd be really arrogant of me to say that I built this thing by myself. I'm standing on the shoulders of, like I said earlier, a grandfather I didn't knew, a dad who sacrificed a lot to do this, and a great group of people around me. Calvin McFadden, who's been with our family for 38 years. We just got great. We've been very blessed with people and opportunity, and I didn't squander it, I guess.
I think it's interesting, Steve, too, to hear you to say, I was thinking when you guys were talking about it, and Jordan saying he's in a similar situation where I've given him a lot of reins and I want to pay it for, and let them take the ropes. But I think a lot of people are a creature of habit. And I tell Jordan and my family all the time, I have some farm family friends who I'm telling you, the one still in charge, maybe 90 years old, and then the next one's maybe set. And the son that's 50, he's just now getting to run the garden hose. He's not getting to do a whole lot of anything still. And it's, how do you, it's like, man, that's a tough cycle to break. And then be like, okay, I'm going to help them and I'm going to turn over. I mean, it's almost like that just stays they just stay in that cycle forever and ever. And it's like, man.
Maybe I'm just lazy enough that I want to be away from here and let these guys work. So
I hear you. That's where I'm at. I'm like, hey, go get them, guys. I'll be over at your house. Hey, go nuts. So, no, I agree. But yeah, that's a tough cycle to break. So the folks that aren't as, I guess Scott, as lucky as you are to have a father like you have, that it's got that type of vision. It's a tough road for a lot of people. So, I mean, lucky.
We're very blessed.
Yeah, for sure. So cool.
What you guys have going on last week? You had a bunch of people out, didn't you?
Yeah, we hosted the Honor the Harvest Forum, which is the United States Farmers and Ranchers in Action, has an annual conference where they invite all stakeholders of the supply chain. This year, obviously, they've been pretty focused on a lot of this climate smart ag discussion, regenerative practices, and different ways that those can actually find ways to be more impactful and boost adoption. And so we're supportive of that vision. And we think that probably even more importantly, farmers need to have a voice in that conversation. And so we were happy to welcome them on the farm and host that event. It was much bigger event than I realized it was going to be. And so they essentially turned our farm into a conference center for a week, and it was it was great just to see folks, many of which had never been on a farm before, just come out and get to have conversations in our shop with us and with others in the industry. And so I hope that it moved the football forward, to continue using that analogy and that conversation. I think at times this is my personal opinion, but there's a little kumbaya effect in some of those meetings too, that hope that, I was glad to see them move beyond that here, but ultimately, we're a very willing family, and try to be very transparent with people, and our farm doors are always open, sometimes too often for maybe our operations team, but we've really felt like we have an opportunity to be great advocates for the industry, and to share our story and our values. And for us, we learn too from every group that comes in. We learn something new, and if we can take some nugget or a new relationship and expand on that, that's great. Perfect example actually from the Van Trump report. The CEO of Covercrest was one of the guys at the event, and so it was great to meet him in person, because that's a new innovative solution coming to kind of a new climate that hasn't figured out the double cropping opportunities yet, but yet likes cover crops, to try and find a way to integrate that. And so to get him on the farm versus try and chase people down via email and different things was great. So no, it went well.
Yeah, I love the open attitude that you guys bring to the table. I was at a conference once and Musk was talking, and he said he hates more than anything patents and copyright. He was just like, he has an open interface system where they share most all of their Tesla data, knowledge, and battery technology and everything. And I think it's pretty cool. I mean, to make that happen. So it's also interesting that how many people invest in ag or have a say in ag, but have never even been on a farm. Yep. I mean, isn't that nuts anymore? It's so crazy.
I was amazed at the number of staff members for a group named U.S. Farmers and Ranchers that had been on a farm before.
I hear you. I don't know, man. It's definitely, we definitely got to get the words out there. Hopefully more people can get out and see things. So, Jordan.
Cool. One more question for you, Scott. I wanted to ask you personally, like, I'm 5 years younger than you. You got a lot going on with the farm and cattle, and you're working with the Red Reef Partners. How do you juggle the balls? Do you just work nonstop, or?
Yeah, Scott, how do you juggle all the balls?
Question. Yeah,
I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm juggling some balls too. So
yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you. I run my day-to-day organization really flows through my email. I'm very OCD about how I organize things, and so I try to run my daily to-dos through my email or through kind of a Excel spreadsheet or notebook. But ultimately, what I found is when you're really excited about everything and everything is somewhat intertwined or there's alignment through it all, you know, you don't feel as bad jumping up to push the balloon back up in the air, right? So the goal that I have is that I'm not just keeping balloons in the air, but that we're actually going somewhere or building something with it. And so for me, it's truly driven a lot by passion. And I think, so one of the things I listened to the All In podcast. I don't know if you guys listen to those guys at all, like Chamath Palihapitiya and David Sachs and some of these guys that have done it more in the venture world, but they always talk about the entrepreneurial kind of characteristics, and one of them is just grit, right? Just the willingness just to get it done, and you're going to figure it out regardless of what it takes. And so in my mind, I've always kind of latched on to that. Is I know I'm not going to be the smartest person in the room, and I'm probably not going to have as much money as others, but I got the ability to go get her done, and I'll work hard and outwork them. And so sometimes it's not as organized as my wife would like it, I guarantee you that, but it definitely has served me well.
Yeah, I was watching a deal this morning on a guy, and he was just saying the difference on he's just like, I'm just an ordinary guy. I mean, there ain't much difference between me and the guy over here that doesn't have much going on. He's not very successful. He's like, but I just give it a little bit more every day, and a little bit more here and a little bit more there, and eventually it adds up to a lot more. So I think that's probably the key. Just keep grinding away.
You know, we always talk in our Red Reef conversations, right, of how do you deliver financial results in farmland to institutional investors. And, you know, when you're dealing with small single-digit cap rates, you know, every penny and every nickel you can pick up off the floor matters, right? And so that's the approach we take to every deal. How can we pick up the pennies and the nickels and the dimes to make the next dollar? And it's amazing when you're actually willing to roll your sleeves up and get down on the floor and find them, the opportunities that are there. And so we really try to take that approach in all aspects, whether it's Red Reef, whether it's Longview Farms, whether it's just family stuff. It's something that we all try to remain committed to.
Yeah, I think one of Jordan's big questions, Scott and Steve, is as he's got this girlfriend, they're all serious, you know, they'll be getting married soon and everything. And she's a teacher, and, you know, our family's always owned our own businesses and all of our own things. So this whole work-life balance thing is starting to come into question. You know, Jordan's just like, Dad, you know, hey, what are we doing? You know, I'm getting blown up over here. I said, well, you're going to have to let her know that this is where it's going, you know? So it is tricky though, right? I mean, all of our friends talk about it.
I think a lot of us have been told that, you know, you can either have a good family life or a successful business or whatever. You know, Laurie and I went to a planning session years and years ago, and I'll never forget for a challenge. We went through this goal setting. All mine were a business, all of hers were family. And she said, can you support me on this? I said, yeah. Can you support me on this? Yeah. And I said, can you support me on this? Yeah. And that day really made me realize it's not an or situation, if or situation. It's an and. And if you're doing it together and you're both on the same page and wanting both people to be successful and your kids to be successful, life's not about always saying that you can't have a successful family if you're in business. You can have both. You just got to give the intentionality and the commitment to love and support and get your butt out of bed and get something done.
I think that's a great one to end on, Jordan. I mean, I think that's an awesome, I love what you even said there. I mean, and that's kind of how Michelle and I have done it as well. Like, we each had our individualism where, you know, I was doing this, she had her jobs and duties she wanted to do, and I had mine, and we tried to help one another succeed at both of those, not try to say, hey, where's my half or where's my takeaway. So I agree with you. And that's important. And I think younger people are struggling with that more and more when we hire new people, and, we may have to work late or extra, and I'm hearing them getting blown up on their cell phone. Hey, where are you at? And it's like, it's I don't know. The quiet quit movement, Scott, that we're hearing now and all that jazz. Just crazy.
We can't let the world pollute all the messages of the truth out there. That there's just, the world just wants to pollute it through social media, yelling at each other, but there's still truth.
You're absolutely right. So that's a great message there, guys. So hey. Been an awesome conversation, Jordan. You got anything else, or we want to wrap
That's
it up?
it. I think we're about an hour in, so probably wrap it up.
That was awesome stuff. So,
well, look forward to seeing you guys.
Yeah, anything we can ever do for you guys, let us know, and we sure appreciate it. Best of luck on it all. So, thank you again. All right.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.